Chapter 1. After twisting my ankle, I took a cab alone to the hospital to undergo an abortion. When the nurse asked where my family was, I instinctively made up an excuse for him. Lying alone on the hospital bed, I felt life slipping away from my body. I flipped open my phone and saw a post from his close friend. "Life is so relaxing without a tiger checking in. Ethan really cares about Candy." Attached was a photo of Ethan gazing tenderly at Candy, who lay on the hospital bed. I liked the post, and the friend quickly deleted it. Ethan messaged me shortly after, cautiously offering an explanation. I simply responded with a faint smile, "Hope you had fun." But Ethan panicked, asking, "Luna, why aren't you checking on me anymore?" Earlier that day, I had twisted my ankle while rushing home to celebrate our wedding anniversary. I messaged Ethan, hoping he could pick me up from work. I waited for him with joy in my heart, eager to hand him the bouquet I'd prepared. Yet all he sent was a cold reply. "I have a dinner party tonight, just grab something on your own." As if afraid I might misunderstand, he added, "No shady people, just childhood friends." It felt like a cold bucket of water poured over me. I tossed the bouquet into the trash and took a cab to the hospital. When the doctor asked about my family, I reflexively replied, "He's in a meeting." I chuckled at myself, realizing how ridiculous that sounded, so I changed my answer. "Sorry, I'm widowed." The abortion went smoothly. I felt no physical pain, only a hollow emptiness inside, as if something had been carved out of me. On my way home, I saw Ethan's familiar car heading toward the hospital. Instinctively, I wanted to message him and ask what was going on. But before I could, I saw another post from his close friend. "Life is so relaxing without a tiger checking in. Ethan really cares about Candy." It was accompanied by the same photo, Ethan gazing tenderly at Candy. This group of friends included 4 men and 1 woman. Ethan and Candy had always been seen as a golden couple. If Candy hadn't been deceived into marrying a foreigner, there's no way I would have ended up marrying Ethan. After Candy divorced and returned to the country with her son, I became the villain who separated this seemingly perfect pair. They never blamed Candy for leaving Ethan, but resented me for coming between them. This small group was wild, partying until the wee hours of the morning. I worried about Ethan's stomach and often called him to remind him to come home. Over time, they grew to dislike me, mocking my nagging and secretly nicknaming me the Tiger. When they visited our home, they treated me like a servant. Today, Ethan chose them over me again. Maybe it's for the best, at least I won't feel soft-hearted anymore. I liked the post, and his friend quickly deleted it, as if forgetting to block me. Around 3 a.m., Ethan finally returned, reeking of alcohol. He lingered in the kitchen for a while before quietly pushing open the bedroom door. Seeing me still awake, his eyes flashed with a hint of panic. Yet he still gently tucked me in. "You didn't make any hangover soup for me tonight?" I responded with a simple, The scent of perfume lingered on him, overpowering the alcohol and making me nauseous. He sighed as if wanting to say something, but held back. In the end, he only left me with one sentence: "You're pregnant, take care of yourself." Chapter 2. The next day, I arrived at work early. No matter how much I was hurt emotionally, I couldn't let it affect my performance. In the past, I had often been late to work because I was busy taking care of Ethan. My punctuality today surprised my supervisor. After the morning meeting, she called me over. "Luna, there's an opportunity to work at our overseas branch. Are you interested? I've always respected your abilities, but I'm a bit worried about." She didn't finish her sentence, but I interrupted with a decisive nod. "Thank you for this opportunity, and I'll cherish it." "Oh." She seemed surprised by my quick agreement, hesitating before softly asking, "I saw you throw away some flowers yesterday. Did you and your husband have a fight?" I smiled and shook my head. "A fight? No, Ethan never fights with me. He just looks at me with that indulgent expression, as if I'm an unreasonable child." Suddenly, my phone buzzed twice. I glanced down to see Ethan calling. His tone was as gentle as always, though tinged with subtle dissatisfaction. "Busy today? Why didn't you cook for me before leaving? Yesterday was our wedding anniversary. I got you a gift." Curious, I asked, "What gift?" "It's a ring in the little box inside my jacket." He rummaged through his pockets, mumbling to himself, "Weird, where did it go?" Then, as if realizing something, he awkwardly explained, "Maybe I left it in the car. I'll buy you another one." I smirked bitterly. In yesterday's photo, Candy was wearing a ring on her finger. So, even for our anniversary gift, you needed your childhood sweetheart to help you try it on? No need. I forgot to get you a gift too. Lulu, are you mad? I really did get you a present. I responded softly. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up now. Work is busy. Since that day, my relationship with Ethan had been lukewarm at best. A few days later, Ethan's mom, Grace, uncharacteristically invited me over for dinner. Grace had always looked down on me, only seeing Candy as the ideal daughter-in-law. After some thought, I decided not to disrespect the elder by declining. When I arrived via taxi, Grace was busy directing Ethan and his group of friends to serve the dishes. As soon as I walked in, the room fell silent and someone whispered under their breath, "Why invite her? She'll just stop Ethan from drinking with us again." I ignored the comment and found a seat. Not long after, Ethan showed up with Candy. I noticed that Candy was no longer wearing the ring. She easily made her way into the kitchen, chatting familiarly with Grace. Ethan, meanwhile, approached me and, like a child showing off his treasure, pulled out the ring. He lied without batting an eye. Turns out I left it in the car. As if oblivious to my emotions, Ethan took my hand and slid the ring onto my finger. I stared at the ring, feeling a sudden wave of revulsion. How many times has he lied like this before? In the kitchen, Grace was all smiles as she addressed Candy. "Oh, Candy, let Lulu handle these things. You're a guest. How could we let you do this?" Candy playfully clung to Grace's arm, acting sweetly. "Aunt Grace, I missed you. Missed me. Then why don't you visit more often? I think you don't care about me or Ethan anymore." Grace shot me a glance before pulling Candy over to me. "Oh, Lulu, I haven't introduced you yet. Candy is my goddaughter, which makes her Ethan's sister. You don't have to worry about their relationship. From now on, when Ethan and Lulu go out, you don't need to check up on them. Surely you trust Ethan's character, don't you?" Her tone carried a hint of authority. "Exactly, sis-in-law, you're always checking on Ethan, which ruins the fun for the rest of us. Look at us, we're all decent people. We wouldn't lead Ethan astray. And besides, our company just started recently, so there's naturally a lot going on. Who doesn't go through this phase when starting a business? Coming home late is no big deal. Candy even ended up in the hospital from drinking with clients. The one chiming in was Wesley, Ethan's close friend and the biggest supporter of Ethan and Candy's dynamic. He was also the one who forgot to block me when posting about them on social media. Wesley had never liked me, and seeing me being lectured by Grace gave him the perfect opportunity to gloat and play along. I frowned. What company? What startup? Wasn't Ethan doing perfectly fine at his current job? Why suddenly start a small company? Realizing he had let something slip, Wesley quickly shut his mouth, and the others stopped talking as well. Chapter 3, The dinner was tasteless. The table fell silent after the earlier commotion. As dinner ended, rain suddenly began pouring down outside. Ethan cautiously approached me. "Lulu, Candy's a woman going home alone. It's not safe. Why don't you stay here at Mom's for a bit? I'll take her home and come back to pick you up." I nodded. Ethan looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he just squeezed my hand gently before letting go and escorted Candy out. I watched their departing figures and opened my phone to call for an Uber, ignoring Grace's attempts to persuade me to stay. I left alone, taking the taxi back home. The rain drenched me, and I thought to myself I must look utterly miserable right now. Ethan rushed back through the rain and pulled me into his arms. "I'm sorry, Lulu. I didn't mean to make you feel this way. It's just that Candy has a child to care for. Since I brought her here, it's my responsibility to make sure she's settled first. Why didn't you wait at Mom's place?" Towards the end, his tone even carried a hint of reproach. "Is it only you who can take her home?" I asked sincerely. "What? Today, you and Wesley both drove here. Was it only you who could take Candy home?" Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to embarrassment. He pursed his lips. I interrupted him. "You wanted to take her home." He suddenly seemed deflated and let out a sigh. "Lulu, are you jealous? I only see Candy as a sister. She's on her own, recently divorced and raising a child. Life must be hard for her. I feel a sense of obligation because we grew up together. I help her when I can. Even quitting your job to start a business with her." I pushed him away, unwilling to cling to the warmth that wasn't truly mine. Ethan froze for a moment before continuing to explain. You misunderstood. The company was something we all decided to start together. We're just trying to seize this opportunity. He adjusted his tie with some impatience and looked at me with those same deeply affectionate eyes. Don't overthink it. You're about to become a mom, yet you're still so jealous. Be careful, or you'll give birth to a little jar of jealousy, But our baby is gone. I was just about to speak when Ethan's phone rang. As soon as he answered, a soft and childish voice came through. Daddy Ethan, why haven't you come to see me yet? I miss you. He glanced at me, panic evident in his eyes, and quickly covered the receiver with his hand as he walked towards the bedroom. Not long after, he changed clothes and prepared to leave again. I'm sorry, Lulu. Candy said the baby is sick and wants to see me. I shrugged indifferently. It's fine, you can go. Ethan kissed me on the cheek. Once I'm done with this startup, I promise I'll stop meeting her alone and spend all my time with you and the baby. As soon as he left, I received messages from Wesley and 2 other friends. Sis-in-law, there's trouble on Candy's side. Can you let Ethan go over for a bit? I didn't reply to their messages and instead focused on discussing the details of my overseas assignment with my supervisor. Meanwhile, Candy updated her social media with the 2 most important men in my life. The accompanying photo showed Ethan sleeping beside her baby. Chapter 4, Ethan's startup was going well. He soon secured his first major project. He invited me to join him at the celebration dinner and repeatedly reassured me, saying, "From now on, I'll spend quality time with you and the baby. If you ever see me doing anything wrong, just say it and I'll change." When we arrived at the restaurant, the waitress froze mid-smile and muttered under her breath, "Switched partners again?" Her voice was soft, but loud enough for me to hear. I paused. Just then, my supervisor messaged me, asking me to return to the office to confirm some urgent matters. Ethan's face darkened, frustration written all over it. "Can't you postpone work for me just this once?" I shook my head. I couldn't count the times I'd called him when I needed him, only to have him hang up without asking a single question, claiming he was busy with work. I had even gone out of my way to bring him lunch, only for his colleague to comment on my outfit and ask for my contact info to buy something similar. Ethan saw that and accused me of monitoring him, saying I was suffocating him and forbidding me from interfering with his work again. Yet now, he wanted me to skip work for a celebration dinner that had nothing to do with me. Ethan paced irritably. "Luna, it's because you don't trust me and Candy that I brought you to this dinner. If you leave now, don't blame me later for your jealousy." I nodded. Jealousy had long lost its meaning for me. After finalizing my overseas plans, my supervisor looked at me with concern. "You've lost quite a bit of weight lately. Are you still in a Cold War?" I didn't answer. Perhaps I was just waiting for the final verdict. Suddenly, a friend request popped up on my phone. The profile picture belonged to the waitress I'd seen at the restaurant earlier. After accepting it, she sent over a video. The video showed Candy holding a wine glass in her mouth, feeding Ethan a drink while his friends cheered around them. The video ended, and a message followed. "You mistresses hiding in the dark are the absolute worst." I chuckled bitterly, then sent her a photo of my marriage certificate from my album. She replied with a shocked, "What the hell?" Before blocking me, I forwarded the video to Ethan and turned off my phone entirely. There were many documents to prepare. By the time I finished my work and turned my phone back on, I received a call from Grace. Her tone was sharp and her words blunt. "Lulu, what have you done?" "Ethan ended up in jail because of you. Confused," I asked. "What happened?" Her voice trembled with anger. "What happened? What did you send him?" "He suddenly started attacking people, and Candy and the others couldn't stop him. Now the police have taken him in for questioning. I'm out of town and can't get there. You better go check what's going on. I don't know how you're being a wife. Are you jealous again?" Without giving me a chance to respond, she hung up, clearly furious. When I arrived at the police station, Ethan had already settled things privately with the other party. He covered his face, which had scratches, and ran up to me as soon as he saw me. "Lulu, listen to me, this isn't what it looks like. It was just a punishment game everyone was playing. That woman misunderstood and deliberately filmed it." Candy looked apologetic, but her eyes couldn't hide their smugness. "I'm so sorry, sis-in-law. We've all grown up together and this is just how we are. Don't worry, there's nothing between Ethan and me. I hadn't said anything yet when the waitress from the hotel limped out of the police station and spat at Candy. Shameless homewrecker, Candy's face went pale instantly. Ethan glared at the waitress viciously, his fists clenching audibly. Tears welled up in Candy's eyes, and she spoke as if deeply aggrieved. "Sis-in-law, you have to believe that Ethan and I are innocent." I nodded. "You are innocent." All right, let's head home first." Sensing my unease, Ethan instinctively stepped in to ease the tension. I pulled open the passenger side car door, only to find a little boy sitting there. Seeing me, he made a silly face. Chapter 5. Mean woman, tiger mom. The childish voice carried nothing but malice. "Tommy, how can you talk to a lady like that?" Candy immediately turned to Ethan, but seeing him just covering his face silently, she continued awkwardly. "He must have picked up those bad words from somewhere. Lulu, don't take it to heart. He just really likes Ethan. Last time he had a fever, he wouldn't calm down until Ethan came to stay with him. Ethan is definitely going to be a great dad someday." I didn't react the way she probably expected. I merely nodded calmly. "You're right." Ethan's face darkened further. He spoke slowly. "In that case, why don't you drive the car? I'll sit in the back with Tommy and Candy." He was deliberately trying to provoke me, trying to make me jealous. But as I looked at the three of them standing together, I didn't feel even a flicker of anger. Ethan was no longer the man whose every move could tug at my emotions. Tommy didn't notice the tension. He thought he'd successfully helped his mom win back Ethan. His smug expression was a perfect match for Candy's. The three of them squeezed into the backseat, with Tommy sitting right in the middle. They looked just like a happy little family. Only Ethan, with his furrowed brows and silence, betrayed the unease. Candy, attempting to lighten the mood, spoke up. "Lulu, I've always heard from Wesley that you're the jealous type, but now I see you're nothing like that." I kept driving, responding with a couple of indifferent mhms. Candy seemed encouraged by my lack of reaction. "Ethan really is a great guy. He's been so good to Tommy and me. Tommy hasn't had a father since he was little, and though he doesn't say it, I know he's always longed for one. I was wondering if we could borrow Ethan for next Sunday. I'd like him to join us at the family park for a day. Don't worry, with Tommy there, nothing inappropriate could possibly happen between us." The car came to a stop. I turned around and gave her a faint smile. "Of course, you don't have to ask me. He's an adult, he can make his own decisions." Luna, Ethan's expression darkened further. He opened the car door for Candy and Tommy, helping them upstairs before returning to the driver's seat, his face grim. "Why aren't you sitting in the front? Are you upset?" I shook my head. "I'm just tired." Without Candy and Tommy, the car fell into an oppressive silence. Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. "This is the last time. Once this is over, I'll make things clear with Candy and Tommy. Luna, just trust me one more time, okay?" Under the weight of his pleading gaze, I nodded. He let out a long, relieved breath, thinking he'd narrowly escaped disaster. But inside, I felt nothing but emptiness. It didn't matter anymore. By next Sunday, I'd already be overseas. Perhaps out of guilt, Ethan was unusually attentive to me that week. He even started waking up early to make me breakfast. Too bad his cooking skills left much to be desired. The food was practically inedible. I thanked him politely, took the packed lunch he'd prepared for me, and threw it into the garbage bin as soon as I stepped out the door. He began texting me frequently, updating me on where he was, what he was doing, and who he was with, just like when we'd first started dating. In the beginning, he'd been the one to initiate this habit of sharing his schedule. At first, I appreciated it, but eventually I grew used to it, while he grew tired. The week flew by, and on Sunday, Ethan dressed impeccably. Though he tried to act casual, the tie he wore betrayed just how much he cared about this meeting. It was the first gift I'd ever given him, bought with 6 months of my salary. When he'd received it, he'd promised to save it for our 50th wedding anniversary. But now, here it was again for a date with another woman and her child. After he left, I quietly removed the ring he'd given me and placed it on the coffee table, pinning it beneath the finalized divorce papers. I packed my suitcase and boarded my flight overseas. If Ethan had been a little more observant, he might have noticed me packing my things over the past few days. If he'd been a little more observant, he might have realized that my abdomen showed none of the signs of a 4-month pregnancy. But all his attention had been directed elsewhere. He resented my restrictions, yet willingly embraced someone else's burdens. If that's the case, then it's better for both of us to part ways amicably. The flight was long enough for me to dream about the ending of our story. When we landed, my phone was flooded with missed calls and unread messages. Ethan was frantic, asking over and over where I'd gone and why I wasn't home. There were also messages from my boss. Have you seen the trending news? Are you okay? Lulu, if there's an issue, I can talk to headquarters about transferring you back temporarily so you can deal with things at home. I opened the trending topics. One entry stood out sharply, titled, "Is this the face of true happiness?" Inside the blog was someone chronicling her life, spending time with her son, husband, and mother-in-law. It all seemed warm and simple, ordinary yet beautiful. But if the husband wasn't Ethan and the mother-in-law wasn't Grace, perhaps things would be different. The blogger's signature line, "Through all the twists and turns, you're still the one who stayed with me," felt like a dagger to my heart. Through all those twists and turns, it turns out I was just a bystander in the story of this romantic couple. Ethan's call came through again. I picked up the phone, and his voice was unexpectedly heavy with sorrow. "Lulu, it's not what you think. Please believe me. Candy just wanted to record her life. She didn't expect it to be picked up by those marketing accounts. Let's not let the internet ruin our lives, Lulu. I don't want a divorce. Can we talk? Where are you? I miss you. I want to come see you." I sighed. "You won't find me, Ethan." "What do you mean?" "The company opened a new branch overseas, and I've already applied to transfer here. The divorce papers are on the coffee table. If there's no issue, just sign them. Let's not make this any messier." "I won't sign." Ethan suddenly became stubborn, repeating himself over and over. "Lulu, you still love me, don't you? You're just angry, right? I'll keep my distance from Candy from now on. I won't do anything you dislike anymore. I truly understand my mistakes. Can't we go back to how things were?" I shook my head. "No, we can't. Please, Lulu." Ethan's voice cracked. "For the baby." A gust of wind brushed against my face, bringing a chill, and it was only then I realized I was crying. But my voice remained resolute. "There's no baby anymore, Ethan. On the day you slid that ring onto Candy's finger, I had the child aborted." Chapter 6, Ethan stayed silent for a long time before finally hanging up. Breathing in the fresh air of this foreign land, I felt reborn. The news of my move overseas and the divorce drama quickly spread among our mutual friends. Those who sided with me cursed Ethan as a scumbag, while his buddies remained unusually quiet. Only Wesley continued to flaunt photos of their nights out drinking and sharing hotel rooms on social media, almost as if to provoke me. Candy commented beneath one of the posts, "Feels like being kids again," even if the timestamp showed it was 3:00 a.m. In the past, I'd have been terrified of Ethan's stomach issues flaring up and would immediately call him to urge him to go home. But now, I just turned off my phone and focused on my work. Occasionally, Ethan would still send me a few messages, which I always ignored. His tone shifted from confident to pleading. "Lulu, we can have another baby. Could you forgive me just this once? I only messed up this one time. I promise I'll change. I can't live without you. Please." I couldn't tell whether he was drunk or sober when he sent these messages, but I no longer cared. Ethan said he wanted freedom. Now I'm granting freedom to both of us. If everyone thinks Candy is the better match for him, then it's time for me to step aside as the villainous ex-wife. Turning my heartbreak into fuel, I threw myself into work with exceptional focus. Soon, the higher-ups at the company noticed my efforts. In less than a month, I passed the review and officially joined Research Team 3. At the welcome party, everyone cheered me on and tried to get me to drink. Noah suddenly stood up and shielded me from the alcohol. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his expression calm and composed. Being fellow expatriates, we naturally gravitated toward each other, offering mutual support to navigate the challenges of working far from home. I understood his feelings for me, but a failed marriage left me temporarily disenchanted with love. Just as we were enjoying ourselves, another call came through. I answered, and there was a long silence on the other end. After a while, Ethan's hoarse voice broke through. "Why is there a man with you?" I laughed softly. "What does that have to do with you?" "It does, how could it not?" In all the years I'd known Ethan, this was the first time I'd heard him so unhinged. He shouted angrily, "We're not divorced yet. I haven't signed the papers. I don't want to lose you. Why don't you care about me anymore? Why don't you get jealous? Lulu, come back. I miss you so much. It's too late. I interrupted his impassioned plea, my voice still calm. I don't love you anymore. I heard him sobbing on the other end of the line. Ignoring it, I hung up and contacted my lawyer. Leaving behind this painful love, I felt alarmingly clear-headed. If we couldn't settle the divorce amicably, I'd proceed with legal action. One way or another, I would never let myself be entangled with Ethan again. The dinner party ended, and I hadn't had a single drink. Noah, however, was thoroughly drunk. My colleagues teased me, insisting that I should take responsibility for getting Noah home. One of the female coworkers even winked at me, her face full of curiosity. Who was calling you earlier? Could it be another admirer? If so, Noah's drinking tonight definitely shouldn't go to waste. I could tell it was obvious that everyone at the gathering was trying to set me up with Noah. But I shook my head and decided to be honest. He's my husband. Crash. That was the sound of a wine glass hitting the floor. I turned around to see the complicated, unreadable expression in Noah's eyes. Because of what I just said, the atmosphere at the party gradually turned cold. It seemed I had a natural talent for ruining the mood. I helped Noah into the car. He was tipsy, his gaze fixed on me the entire time. As I leaned over to buckle his seatbelt, he suddenly pulled me into an embrace. I struggled briefly, only to hear the heavy thudding of his heartbeat. In a muffled voice, he asked me, "Am I too late?" The night was quiet with only the distant chirping of insects. I asked, "Noah, do you want to hear my story?" The entire drive, I spoke while Noah just listened in silence. He didn't respond at all. Sometimes I even suspected he'd passed out, but whenever I paused, he would open his eyes to look at me, eager to hear what happened next. Without realizing it, I poured out all the grievances I'd been holding inside. By the time I dropped him off at his place, I realized I had treated him like a sounding board. Feeling embarrassed, I apologized to him, but Noah simply patted my head. "Luna." The moonlight cast a silvery glow on him as he spoke slowly. "True love is never guilty. The guilt lies in betraying it. I'll wait for you for the day you're ready to accept this love." Chapter 7. In the middle of the night, I was jolted awake by the shrill sound of my phone ringing. The moment I answered, I was met with Grace's sobbing. Having my sleep interrupted left me in no mood to listen to her cry, so I asked impatiently, "What's the matter?" For once, Grace's attitude toward me had softened. She usually spoke to me in a condescending tone, ordering and berating me as if I were some scheming woman who had seduced her son. Sometimes, she even went out of her way to make things difficult for me because of Candy. But this time, she stammered, "Lulu, do you have a moment?" I replied coldly, "I'm abroad. It's 3 a.m. here." I sigh, "This whole thing is our family's fault. But can you help Ethan clear this up? Just say you two are already divorced." "Lulu, I know this is unfair to you, but I'm desperate. Please, have some pity on this old woman. Ethan lost his father early, and if something happens to him, I won't be able to go on." From her fragmented words, I pieced together the full story. I grabbed my tablet and checked the news. Sure enough, the previous trending topic had developed further. Someone had leaked Ethan's marital status, and Candy had gone from being a beloved influencer to being labeled a home-wrecking mistress. Every platform was flooded with hate directed at the two of them, with some even photoshopping funeral portraits of them. Even Tommy wasn't spared. Rumors were spreading that he was Ethan's illegitimate child. I noticed that Candy's profile picture on my contact list had turned into a black square, and all her social media posts had been wiped clean. I felt irritated. Why couldn't these messy affairs leave me alone, even after I'd fled overseas? Losing all patience, I suppressed my anger and snapped, "Don't try to guilt-trip me with morality. The one refusing to sign the divorce papers is your son, not me if you're really worried about Ethan. Then tell him to sign the damn agreement already." "Lulu, how can you talk like that? Ethan is still your husband, and you, not after the divorce." I hung up with a smack and threw my phone onto the bed. A wave of frustration surged through me. Why was I always the one expected to give in? This mess was their doing. They should clean it up themselves. No one had the right to drag me back into their toxic circle. Perhaps shedding that burden lightened my heart, because I slept more soundly that night than I had in a long time. To celebrate my new job, my company had given me half a day off. I slept until noon before heading into work. But not long after I arrived, a colleague came over to tell me there was a homeless man asking for me at the door. I was puzzled, but Noah, sensing my concern, offered to come with me. As soon as I stepped outside, I recognized that familiar figure. It was Ethan. I hadn't seen him in days, and he looked gaunt. His cheeks were sunken, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hair was a disheveled mess, as if he hadn't bothered grooming himself in weeks. When he saw me, his cloudy eyes lit up, only to darken with anger the moment he noticed Noah. He stormed over, trying to shove Noah away. "Get lost, who said you could be near Lulu?" In stark contrast to Ethan's haggard state, Noah had always maintained a disciplined routine and kept up with his fitness. Ethan's shove didn't even make him budge. I frowned, confused about what Ethan was trying to accomplish with this outburst. He turned to me, his bloodshot eyes filled with despair. Standing before me, he bowed his head, pleading, "Lulu, come back with me. Let's not get divorced, okay?" I shook my head. "Ethan, we're already over, acting like this isn't fair to me or to Candy." "No, it's not over." Ethan grew anxious. He tried to reach for my hand, but Noah stopped him. With a gentle shove, Ethan stumbled to the floor, and the ring I had abandoned on the coffee table fell out and rolled a few times. Ethan's eyes grew even redder. Holding the ring tightly, he pleaded with me. "Lulu, please give me another chance." I shook my head again. "Even if you refuse to sign the divorce papers, I can still file for divorce. Dragging this out won't help anyone, not the situation, not Candy or Tommy. Just sign the papers." I turned to leave. Ethan tried to follow, but the security guard at the door stopped him. Behind me, he called my name in despair, over and over, but I would not turn back for him anymore. Chapter 8 later, I heard that Candy had run off with all their money. Ethan couldn't handle the blow and started drinking heavily at home, completely destroying himself. One of his childhood friends called me a few times to talk about Ethan's ruined life, but I listened silently, feeling nothing. A few months later, I received the divorce papers signed by Ethan. As I held them in my hands, I realized my chains had finally been broken. What happened yesterday died with yesterday. My future now belongs to me, and I will embrace a new life. End of the first story. Subscribe to my channel if you like my stories. Don't miss the second exciting story. Story 2. Years later, Zoe appeared at Ethan's side, wearing a face that bore a striking resemblance to mine. That was when I knew. The mistress's daughter was trying to do to me exactly what her mother once did to mine. But I wasn't about to let her succeed. That very day, I left Ethan a divorce agreement, claiming half of his assets before walking away. I was done playing the game. One Ethan was taken aback when his wife hung up on him. They had been married for 6 years, and Olivia was known for her gentle nature, grace, and poise. Among their social circle, she was admired for her kindness even towards his often demanding daughter, Sweetie. She had never shown the slightest hint of impatience. But as he got to the parking lot and opened the car door, it suddenly dawned on him that he might have said something wrong. "Zoe is still your sister. If you hold so much hostility toward your own family, how can I believe you'll make a good mother?" Fastening his seatbelt, Ethan rubbed his temples through the bridge of his glasses, a gesture of frustration. He didn't mean to upset her, it was just that Zoe had been in tears earlier, talking about quitting her job. And no sooner had that conversation ended than Sweetie called, complaining that Olivia had withheld her allowance, leaving her humiliated in front of her classmates. It wasn't that Ethan distrusted Olivia, but Sweetie's tearful complaints had worn him down. As he started the car, a pang of unease settled in his chest. Olivia's rare display of anger had left him unsettled. Pressing his lips together, he accelerated slightly, arriving at their villa 10 minutes earlier than usual. A faint light glowed from their bedroom window, and Ethan let out a small sigh of relief as he headed upstairs. But when he entered, all he found was a single sheet of paper, a divorce agreement placed neatly on the small desk. From the moment I saw Zoe at work and discovered she was already Ethan's secretary, to the time I packed up my belongings and left, no more than 3 hours had passed. 3 more hours later, I was 500 miles away, at my mother Grace's home in another city. When she opened the door and saw me standing there like I was fleeing for my life, her eyes widened in shock. "I told you before, marrying him wasn't a good idea," I said. Years ago, my mother had been forced out of her marriage by Zoe's mother and left with nothing. She later remarried and became a stepmother herself, treating her stepdaughter as her own. By the time we reunited, she had already moved past the pain of her first marriage and was eager for me to settle down and find stability. Back then, she had just undergone a life-threatening surgery, and I didn't have the heart to go against her wishes. So, I chose Ethan from among the men she introduced me to, a single father with a 3-year-old daughter. She didn't want me to become a stepmother like she had, but I told her that if I had to marry, Ethan was the only choice. She held me tightly and sobbed, "A marriage without love or children is the worst kind of misery." But I didn't care. After all, a marriage without love and children meant I could walk away whenever I wanted, unscathed. Zoe's arrival in my life was like a tidal wave crashing against the shore. But it wasn't my marriage with Ethan that took the hit. For 6 years, Ethan and I had maintained a polite, almost distant relationship. At times, it felt like we didn't even know each other that well, mostly because of me. I was like a deer drinking from a stream, forever ready to bolt at the first sign of danger. Ethan had expressed his frustration with my aloofness more than once. We had never kissed deeply before. Last night, when things got intimate, he insisted on finding my lips. As usual, I turned my head away, but he held my hands down and persisted. "Don't," I said firmly, turning my head away again. For some women, their lips are the last private sanctuary. "Olivia, you're one of those women," he said, biting my chin lightly. "I'm not, please let me in completely, Olivia," he interrupted, cupping my face in his hands. I struggled, pushing him away with all my strength, even kicking out with my legs. But he wouldn't stop, leaning his entire weight on me instead. "I want all of you," he said softly, pressing a kiss to the tip of my nose. The gesture sent a shiver through my entire body. As I met his gaze, filled with deep emotion, I felt a surge of anger. By then, I already knew about his connection with Zoe, and I wanted to tell him he had no right to ask this of me. But deep down, I also felt a sense of relief that he had never truly possessed me. So, when he brazenly brought Zoe into our lives, I didn't hesitate to walk away. The moment I fell asleep in my mother's guest bed that night, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. It was as if a long-awaited shoe had finally dropped. If someone else wanted to take on the role of Mrs. E, they could have it. For Ethan and I never really had any major conflicts. In fact, we even shared moments of connection. He once confided in me that Emma wasn't actually his biological daughter, she was his sister's child. After a plane crash claimed the lives of her entire family, he had taken the little girl in and vowed to treat her as his own for the rest of his life. He then solemnly promised me that aside from this one matter, he would never let me suffer in any way. That day, we strolled along the riverbank, and the soft breeze carried a sense of calm. Even the rustling wind seemed to whisper with tenderness. I opened up about my past, about my cruel and selfish stepmother, my cold and unfeeling father, and Zoe, my manipulative and deceitful stepsister. Ethan listened in shock, his eyes filled with pity as he pulled me into his arms. "Olivia, you'll have your own home someday." Not long after, Ethan proposed to me. Later, he gave me an extravagant wedding, the kind that felt almost too grand to be true. Perhaps he was overly satisfied with me. Clumsily, he gifted me a box of diamond rings to express his feelings. Ethan kept his promise, he gave me everything but a child. I've always been someone who repays kindness with kindness. Ethan gave me dignity and respect, and I made sure he wasn't shortchanged in return. I once told him, "Ethan, I'm not sure I can be a good mom. I carry nothing but lessons learned through pain and suffering. But trust me on this, I won't let Sweetie relive the hardships I endured during my childhood." For 6 years, Ethan has been a decent partner in marriage. Trusting him and relying on him has always been effortless. There were times when I considered placing my painful childhood and lonely, drifting life onto his shoulders, hoping it would make my life easier. But reflecting on everything today, I'm grateful that the shadows cast by Zoe and her mom were far greater than anything Ethan could ever impose. Ethan, after all, was merely tolerable. Mom came to my room late at night for a heart-to-heart conversation. "We're about to get divorced," I said, looking her in the eye, my emotions calm and unruffled. She covered her mouth in shock. "I used to think Ethan and I could go farther together," she murmured. Marriage holds no sacredness in my heart. Ethan will never understand that even if he replaced me with any other woman in the world, as long as he didn't bring up divorce, I could have lived peacefully by his side. But it had to be Zoe, the mistress's daughter, trying to repeat her mother's old tricks, but I refused to walk the same path again. When Mom heard Zoe's name, she fell silent. After a long pause, she asked, "Are you sure?" I nodded firmly. How could I not be sure? The usually measured Ethan had brought Zoe into his social circle without hesitation, allowing others to call her little sister-in-law without ever clarifying the misunderstanding. Half a month ago, he even gave Zoe a Range Rover Evoque, while my own car was a Range Rover Sport. It seemed like he was deliberately creating a rivalry between Zoe and me. Even worse, my stepdaughter Emma threw a tantrum, demanding money from me to buy every third-grade classmate an iPhone. When I tried reasoning with her, she glared at me with sheer arrogance. "Olivia, you evil witch, I don't want you to be my mom anymore, I want Aunt Zoe instead. If you don't please me, I'll side with Aunt Zoe." I calmly recounted these words to Mom. She finally broke down, hugging me tightly and crying her heart out. "What kind of sins have I committed?" she wailed. "Chloe abused you when you were little, and now her daughter wants to destroy your family." Still, she remained unwilling to fully accept the truth. Staring at me in disbelief, she whispered, "Ethan isn't like that. I've talked to him about your past. He's always been so considerate and steady." "I never expected his pity," I replied, because I knew that someday, pity would become a blade aimed directly at my heart. I blocked Ethan on everything. But 3 days after leaving Mom's house, I received a text from Zoe. "Sis, it's Zoe. I didn't expect my presence to provoke such a strong reaction from you. Please believe me, there's nothing improper between me and Ethan. Your sudden departure has put Ethan in a tough spot, and I don't know how to handle this situation. Sis, past grievances between generations shouldn't affect us. Besides, we've already faced our retribution. Dad's company went bankrupt, as you know. A month ago, I even asked you for help, but you refused me. That's why I turned to Ethan. If he treats me differently, it's only because you're his wife, I know that. So, sis, could you come back? Ethan and I are waiting for you in New York, along with Emma. I'll even apologize on her behalf." I read the message quietly for a long time. I have to admit, Zoe has always known exactly where to strike to hurt me the most. Her words disgusted me. She was like a maggot, crawling out to remind me that some things had long since rotted from within. But I was no longer the person I used to be. Calmly, I blocked and deleted her message in one seamless motion, ensuring her words couldn't harm me in the slightest. Zoe, who had been a gutter rat for so long, now dared to provoke me directly. The signal was clear. She believed she held the upper hand. These tricks. Her mother, Chloe, was the true pioneer. Years ago, Chloe humbled herself, endured quietly until Zoe turned 3, then got pregnant with a son before cornering Mom and demanding her place in the family. Predictably, later that evening, Zoe switched to another number and eagerly reached out to me again. This time, it was a direct call. Her pretense of innocence was gone. The first thing I heard was the light chuckle she always made as a child when she got her way. Then slowly she began, "Sis, aren't you lucky? After leaving us, you managed to marry so well. In such a hurry to run away, are you scared of me? Don't worry, as long as you obediently get divorced, I won't let you end up like your mom, with nothing to your name." I laughed aloud. "Zoe, did you forget to do your homework on me? I graduated from Harvard Law School and specialize in divorce litigation. Why don't you start by begging me for mercy? After all, it was the lesson you and your mother taught me when I was young that made me choose to become a lawyer." The other end of the phone went silent, then hung up abruptly. I felt a wave of disinterest. Leaning on the railing, I gazed at the pitch-black night sky. If Zoe could find me, then Ethan, who practically ruled the city, would surely have no trouble. I left, but I'm not dead. "Ethan, I'm waiting for you." At the charity gala, Ethan seemed somewhat absent-minded. Someone approached to greet him, "Mr. Ethan, Mrs. Ethan." He instinctively furrowed his brows, but the man's companion quickly tried to salvage the situation. "What are you saying? When have you ever seen Mrs. E with long hair?" "My apologies, Mr. Ethan." Beside him, Zoe chuckled and affectionately looped her arm through his. "It's no big deal. I begged my brother-in-law to take me out to see the world." She easily diffused the awkward moment. Ethan's gaze lingered on Zoe's long hair cascading down her back, his eyes darkening. He was reminded of Olivia, who had unexpectedly chopped off her long hair, the hair she'd kept for years on the day she married him. It was cut so short, dyed a bold wine red, vibrant and fiery, yet sharp and edgy. He had casually probed, women usually cut their hair for a reason. Olivia merely smiled without responding. That night, still unsettled, he twirled a strand of her prickly short hair between his fingers and said, "Olivia, I still prefer the way you looked with long hair." But for 6 years, Olivia had never granted his wish. Back home, Sweetie ran toward Zoe and glanced behind them. HMPH, I knew Olivia wouldn't have the guts to come back. Aunt Zoe, play with me, the tutor followed close behind, looking distraught and explaining. Mr. Ethan, Emma had quite a lot of homework today. Ethan knew full well that wasn't the issue. Without Mrs. E around, the tutor simply couldn't keep Emma in line. He glanced at his watch. It was already 9:40. Normally, Sweetie would have been asleep by now. Sensing his displeasure, Sweetie hid behind Zoe, who spread her arms protectively, her eyes reddening. Brother-in-law, blame me if you must. I saw Emma feeling pitiful and couldn't help but indulge her a bit. Looking at the two of them, both appearing utterly aggrieved, Ethan felt a wave of frustration clogging his chest. Fine, it's my fault for interfering. Brother-in-law, I'll just leave. If I leave, perhaps Olivia will come back, Zoe added. No need, Ethan stormed upstairs, irritated. He tugged at his tie and sat down on the edge of the bed, lighting a cigarette. He couldn't understand why Olivia couldn't be a little more like Zoe, lower her guard just a bit, and give Sweetie the maternal love she deserved. It wasn't that hard, was it? In just a month, Zoe had managed it effortlessly. He had tried back when they first got married. With Sweetie still young, he'd wanted to solidify their roles as mother and daughter. But Olivia had adamantly insisted Sweetie should only call her Aunt Olivia. She explained that she would uphold her role as an elder, giving Sweetie care and love, and that responsibility was far more practical than maternal affection. That day, they had argued behind closed doors until Olivia, exhausted, said to him, "Ethan, if I had encountered a stepmother like me when I was a child, I would have been thrilled." Her tone carried a faint sadness and resignation. He was speechless, pulling her into a tender embrace, and never brought up the matter again. But for some reason, after years of peaceful coexistence among the three of them, Ethan now felt discontent. He believed their family shouldn't remain this way. Ethan opened his phone and pulled up Olivia's number, only to find, unsurprisingly, that he was still blocked. A wave of irritation surged within him. Mrs. E had always been rational and composed. Why had she suddenly become so stubborn and headstrong? Hadn't he even made Zoe apologize to her? Lost in thought, he didn't realize the cigarette had burned down to his fingers until the pain snapped him back to reality. He tossed it away hastily. Eventually, he called Grace in B City. But Grace, who had always treated him warmly, merely informed him in a detached tone that Olivia had only stayed at her home for one night before leaving the next day. After saying this, Grace hung up the call herself. Ethan's hand trembled slightly. He knew his wife was never one to air family matters publicly unless absolutely necessary. Then, his mind drifted to the divorce agreement, a document that clearly wasn't hastily drafted. His heart sank, feeling suspended in an abyss with no solid ground. "Find Olivia's new contact information immediately. I'll be waiting," he said, his voice shaking as he dialed his assistant. 3 days later, Ethan finally heard Olivia's voice again. She had discarded her old SIM card and gone to a remote area. It wasn't until she returned to a hotel in the city that they managed to reach her. "Ethan." Hearing Olivia's calm, emotionless tone, Ethan's initial anxiety was replaced by an uncontrollable fury. Especially when Olivia mentioned, "I've already mailed Emma's supplementary card to her. By now, she should have received it." "What do you mean by that? Is this your attitude as an elder? First, you leave without a word, completely disregarding everyone else's situation. And now, all you do is avoid responsibility." His voice grew heated, filled with apparent disappointment. "Olivia, I think that if you don't maintain a good relationship with your father's family, you'll never be able to adopt the right attitude toward Sweetie." After a sharp and heated critique, the silence that followed was electrifying, interrupted only by the dial tone after 3 seconds. Ethan stood there in a daze for what felt like an eternity, a flicker of regret crossing his face. Then, with a sudden burst of anger, he hurled his phone out the window. A few days later, I got a new SIM card and called Ethan from an unfamiliar number. I wasn't sure if he'd pick up. "Olivia, it's time to stop fooling around and come home." To my surprise, Ethan spoke first, his tone calm and composed as if nothing had happened. "So, can we talk properly now?" I asked. Ethan remained silent. I took his silence as agreement and continued. "Ethan, we've reached an irreconcilable impasse. I'm grateful for the 6 years we shared with Emma, but this is where it ends." Ethan said nothing, though his breathing grew noticeably heavier. After a few more seconds of silence, he finally spoke. "When are you coming back?" He insisted on asking about my return. "After we reach a preliminary agreement on the divorce," I replied decisively. "Once I make up my mind, I never look back, so there was no need to return and go through the motions with him. Olivia, you don't need to take out your anger on Emma. She made a mistake, but you should discipline her properly. I admit my attitude was wrong, but as an adult, you shouldn't have stayed out of it." I couldn't help but laugh, cutting off his self-righteous words. "You know exactly why, Ethan. There's no need for this kind of probing." Over the years, Ethan's pointless attempts to test me had happened too many times, far exceeding my tolerance. He wanted to pry into my heart, to step inside, but all he ever did was annoy me to no end. It's like he insisted on dressing me in a tattered coat in the dead of winter, clueless about the gaping holes letting the cold seep in. After hanging up, Ethan opened the liquor cabinet, grabbed a bottle of XO, and began drinking straight from the bottle. When he was slightly tipsy, Zoe walked in with the mistress's daughter. She froze when she noticed something on the nightstand. Ethan had left the divorce papers out in plain view. Realizing his mistake, he grabbed the papers and attempted to tear them apart, but they were too thick, filled with attachments, and wouldn't budge. Frustrated, he got up, turned on the shredder, and watched as the machine devoured the documents, one page at a time. Sweetie shouted, "Olivia won't divorce you, she's just trying to scare us, Dad. You're so rich." She'd never let go of that. Ethan's eyes turned instantly bloodshot, and Zoe quickly covered Sweetie's mouth. Approaching him cautiously, Zoe tugged at his sleeve and said softly, "Ethan, I'm sure Olivia is just mad at you because of me. Don't take it too seriously. After all, it's my fault she's estranged from Grace and Emma." Ethan let out a sarcastic laugh. "What does that have to do with you? You were just a kid back then. She's the one who insisted on being so stubborn. She always casts herself as the victim, irrationally rejecting others' sincerity, even trampling on their goodwill. When it comes to family and relationships, she's a complete mess." Thinking about Olivia's lukewarm demeanor, Ethan kicked the shredder, teetering on the edge of emotional collapse. Zoe threw her arms around him. "I know you love Olivia. Everyone says Mr. E and Mrs. E are the perfect couple, never even raising their voices at each other." Ethan laughed bitterly and pushed her away, staggering as he moved past her. As he reached the door, he muttered under his breath, "Perfect couple. Back then, she was the only one willing to promise me she wouldn't have kids for Emma." Zoe gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Ethan didn't explain further and walked downstairs alone. A few minutes later, he drove away from the villa. Zoe stared at the shredder, her expression icy and calculating. If what Ethan said was true, that his marriage to Olivia was merely a transaction, there would have been no need for him to shred those divorce papers. Olivia truly had a knack for playing her cards right. I was at a pottery studio tucked away in a small alley, shaping a slender-necked vase. It had been a long time since I last did this, so I was a bit rusty, and my leather skirt was splattered with clay. That's when Ethan appeared, his tall frame clad in a navy trench coat, squeezing through the narrow entrance to stand before me. The autumn sunlight streaming through the doorway was instantly blocked, and a chill ran through me. He frowned as he looked at me, seemingly puzzled by my connection to such a hobby. It wasn't surprising he didn't know much about me. After we got married, I had given up many of my interests. With a child to care for, I was busy working at the company and co-founding a law firm with some partners. As the company's legal counsel, you should know I can't get divorced right now. I looked at him, fully aware of what he meant. Ethan Corp was in the process of acquiring a struggling century-old enterprise, and the competition was cutthroat. He couldn't afford any negative publicity. I thought for a moment before extending my hand toward him. You could at least give me the signed divorce agreement. Ethan chuckled, his expression tinged with mockery. Liv, even if we filed at City Hall, I'd still have 30 days to change my mind. You know, if I were truly unwilling, I could drag this out for 2 years. I stared at him quietly. As a lawyer, I knew well that he wasn't wrong. 7 years ago, had I known how easy it was to get married and how difficult it would be to divorce, I would have never married Ethan. It was as if I had foreseen all the challenges that lay ahead, yet I never imagined he would bring Zoe into our marriage, utterly destroying my faith. This game, there's no playing it anymore. I smiled faintly, took off my apron, washed my hands, and got into Ethan's car. Zoe greeted us in her casual clothes as we arrived. Liv, you're finally back, she said warmly. Emma, who had been arguing with her tutor, instantly quieted down, instinctively sat at her desk, and straightened her posture. The tutor let out a deep sigh of relief and threw me a thankful glance. I gave Zoe a polite nod and pushed my luggage toward the guest room on the first floor. Behind me, Ethan commented, Emma has fallen behind on her studies. By the way, the supplementary card is still under my control, as before you can manage it. He handed the card to me in front of Emma. Emma immediately burst into tears. I promised to buy smartphones for my friends on my birthday in 2 days if I don't deliver. They'll laugh at me. She cast a pleading look at Zoe. Zoe was about to respond when Ethan cut her off sharply. Stop it. These things are for your mother to sort out. I quietly observed Emma, my gaze making her sobs falter. Come here, I said, putting the card away. Reluctantly, Emma shuffled over to me, still glaring at me with frustration. Zoe, I'll have the driver take you home, Ethan said firmly, leaving no room for Zoe to refuse. Reluctantly, Zoe pressed her lips together and left. Emma started crying again. After the tutor and the nanny left, Ethan massaged his brows in exhaustion and pointed toward Emma, saying, Deal with her. And so, it was just me and Emma staring at each other. I felt a headache coming on. Previously, disciplining Emma was within my responsibilities, but now, if it weren't for the agreement Ethan and I reached in the car earlier, I wouldn't have taken on this mess. Luckily, the acquisition deal is set to be finalized this month. For a swift and smooth divorce, I had no other choice. Are you done whining? I asked. You said you were old enough to make your own decisions, yet only children cry and make a fuss. Why do you care? I'm not crying for you, she shot back defiantly. I won't be buying the smartphones, but do you still want me to help you resolve the issue? I asked calmly. Her brows furrowed deeply. This was clearly a big problem for her. After all, someone as proud and self-assured as her couldn't bear to be humiliated in front of her classmates. She hadn't lost her mind entirely and understood that with the card in my possession, the decision was final. After a while, she replied in a small voice, Yes. I nodded, pointing to the scattered homework on her desk. Wash your face and finish your assignments. How are you going to fix it? She asked, unmoving. If you don't do as I say, I won't bother helping, I replied vaguely. I've always handled her this way. Fuming, she stomped off to the bathroom, then returned to her desk with a vengeance, furiously working on her homework as if every stroke of her pen was meant to stab me. I smiled faintly but quickly suppressed it, heading upstairs. 2 weeks later, the acquisition deal was finalized. I reprinted the divorce agreement and waited for Ethan in the living room. When he returned, he smelled faintly of alcohol. Join me for a late-night snack, he said as he asked the housekeeper to prepare seafood porridge. I picked up the bowl, ready to take a bite, but was overcome by a wave of nausea. What's wrong? Ethan asked. I glanced at him, a sense of foreboding rising in my chest. When the family doctor arrived, my absurd suspicion was confirmed. Mrs. E, congratulations, you're pregnant. It appears to be about 7 weeks along, the doctor announced. Ethan nodded, his expression showing no surprise. In fact, he seemed quietly pleased. I stared at Ethan in disbelief. We had both agreed not to have children, and he had even undergone sterilization to prevent any chance of pregnancy. But now, I realized he had secretly undergone a reversal procedure. Last month, Ethan returned from Munich late at night after a week-long business trip. When he climbed into bed, he woke me up with his restless hands. Stop it. That's not possible anymore, I said, pushing him away. He paused for a moment before leaning closer again. You know, it was my idea not to have kids in the first place. Why are you more vigilant about it than me? Don't mess around, I replied. He chuckled softly in my ear. You don't need to try so hard anymore. I had assumed he was referring to his sterilization, but I was even more cautious than him, insisting on taking precautions all these years. That night, however, Ethan was unusually passionate and persistent. As a partner in bed, he had always been both skilled and unexpectedly tender. Dazed and half asleep, I let him have his way for once. After 6 years, that single lapse resulted in this. Ethan, I didn't expect this either. Maybe it's fate keeping us together, Ethan said, holding my hand. Let's not talk about divorce anymore, okay? I'm not having the baby. It wouldn't be fair to Emma, I replied, frowning. That girl had long claimed herself as the sole focus of this household. There would be no more siblings. This was a promise I had made to her in private. Though I had weathered storms, I never sought to take away her umbrella. She's grown up now, and you've done a great job raising her, Ethan remarked nonchalantly. You don't need to go to the company for now. I'll have HR arrange someone to take over the legal affairs as soon as possible. You just focus on taking care of yourself and the baby. He announced this as if it were already settled, confident that I would compromise for the sake of the child. After a moment of thought, he picked up his phone. It's late, so I won't call. I'll text Mom to share the good news. Tomorrow, I'll discuss with her. I think she'll be more than happy to come and take care of you. He knew this was my mom's lifelong wish. He also knew that for years, my mom had been riddled with guilt. If not for her, I would never have stepped into this marriage. Before Grace arrived, Ethan began sticking close to me, barely leaving my side. He moved all his work back home. One day, choosing his moment, he suddenly brought up Zoe. I saved your father's company, and she's already returned to work there. You don't need to concern yourself with her anymore. If you still feel unsatisfied. Ethan, ever the shrewd businessman, seemed to have calculated everything. The Zoe family has signed an exclusive supply agreement. Their products can only be sold to me. Olivia, their fate now rests in your hands. They're walking on eggshells, living in constant fear, doing everything they can to please you. He gently pulled me into his arms. Whether you choose to reconcile with them or take revenge, it's entirely up to you. It was as if he had suddenly woken up, giving closure to all the people and things that had once made me unhappy. I felt moved just a little. But mostly, I felt unfamiliarity. The steady, responsible Ethan I once knew, the man who was like a loving father figure, was gone. As his business empire expanded, he had become more like an arrogant, unromantic, controlling opportunist. The next day, the Zoe family came bearing lavish gifts. As Ethan had predicted, they went out of their way to appease me. Naturally, I didn't show them any warmth. The housekeeper prepared a lavish dinner, and the Zoe family stood in unison to toast Ethan. Yet Ethan sat beside me, softly asking how my appetite was. 3 outstretched hands, holding their glasses aloft, hovered awkwardly in midair. Brother-in-law. Zoe called out with a trace of resentment. Ethan didn't even look up. You wanted to make a name for yourself, in our social circle. I've already given you enough of a way out. From now on, you're on your own. Chloe lost her composure and blurted out, Ethan, don't you like my Zoe? If it weren't for that little tramp, she almost let slip the derogatory name she used to call me. If Olivia hadn't schemed to get pregnant, who knows who Mrs. E would be now? I replied calmly, scheming to get pregnant is your signature move. What does that have to do with me? Ethan poured me a glass of milk. Ma'am, with a malicious stepmother like you as a role model, I'd never dare marry Zoe. Zoe's face turned crimson with shame and fury. Chloe, humiliated, looked utterly defeated. My father, as usual, shifted the blame, pointing at Chloe and shouting, Stop embarrassing me if you can't carry yourself properly. At least stop dragging my daughter down with you. Chloe's plump body trembled, her eyes flipping upward as she fainted and fell backward. It wasn't until the ambulance arrived that the farce finally ended. That night, Zoe called me. Olivia, don't think that you've won. Her voice carried a crazed defiance, a kind of desperation before utter collapse. Do you really think Ethan loves you? No one knows better than him how much you hate me. Yet he still enjoys flirting with me, giving me hope. He paraded me around in public just to provoke you. She laughed bitterly, a sound that grated on my ears. I know, I replied. What? Zoe sounded like she couldn't believe her ears. As Ethan's wife, it wasn't hard to figure out his mind. He knew that someone with a painful childhood like mine would never want to lose to Zoe again. To win, I would likely lose my usual composure, stooping to jealousy and rivalry with her. And that's exactly what he wanted to see me love him without reservation. To ensure that, he even secretly restored his ability to have children, using the baby to cut off my escape route. He also knew the Zoe family was a sore spot for me, yet he used Emma as an excuse to force me to reconcile with my original family. Reconciliation was just a pretense. What he really wanted was to see me lose my footing, to see me flustered and hysterical. After over 6 years of peace, he had grown tired of my calm detachment. It made him feel defeated. But I had always adhered to my role as his wife, taking responsibility for Emma. He couldn't find fault with me. He knew about your provocations. He also knew I wasn't in the wrong, it was Emma's tantrums, yet he allowed it all to happen. So, after I left home, he didn't contact me. Instead, he sent Zoe to provoke me. He wanted to break me, to control me. But what he didn't know was that I would never let my guard down and love someone completely. To me, that was unforgivable. So, you're happily carrying his child, yet here you are pretending to be above it all. You're destined to end up like your mother, losing to us. Zoe could no longer hide the venom and jealousy in her eyes. If you have the guts, go ahead and get rid of the baby. I don't believe Ethan would choose you over me. This child was the escape route Ethan had prepared for himself. But when he used love as an excuse to hurt me, openly and brazenly, there was no escape left for us. Besides, his so-called love wasn't love at all. It was merely the most basic form of competitiveness. I blinked and said calmly, "Why should I get rid of the baby just to fulfill your wish?" Zoe's confident voice rang out. "Olivia, you were once so afraid of betrayal that you didn't even dare to fall in love. Women like you, so extreme, can't tolerate even the smallest flaw. Are you really going to give birth to the child of a cheating man? Are you not afraid that your child will follow in your footsteps and turn into a paranoid neurotic like you?" I exhaled deeply. "Thank you for reminding me, Zoe. Talking to you is truly enlightening." Then, I pressed the button to end the recording and hung up the phone. 17 Mom still came to Chicago as planned. She looked at my pregnant belly as if she had found a treasure, immediately called my stepfather, and decided to stay here long-term to ensure everything went smoothly until I gave birth. Mom took over the housekeeper's duties, buying groceries, cooking, and accompanying me on walks. She was more anxious than Ethan, even forbidding me from working at the firm. "You have a partner, don't you? At worst, give them a bigger year-end bonus. You're not short on money right now. Priority should be the baby, right, Ethan?" At dinner, Mom wouldn't stop nagging. Ethan smiled warmly. "Of course, I'm really grateful you came over, Mom. Olivia is always so headstrong and never listens to me." Mom waved her hand dismissively. "That's not up to her. Work is never more important than the baby." I could only smile helplessly and drink an extra bowl of soup. Emma slammed her bowl on the table and stormed off. "HMPH, you're all liars. I'm not playing with you anymore." Ethan wanted to say something to her, but I stood up and said, "I'll arrange her evening classes. It's okay, I'll calm her down." He held my hand. "Thank you, Olivia." I smiled. "It's my duty. I also hope the kids can get along well in the future." Reluctantly, Ethan let go of my hand. Half a month later, he finally allowed Mom to take me out for walks, while he packed up and officially returned to work at the office. That day, after dismissing the driver, I got into my business partner's car and headed straight to the hospital. My partner wiped the sweat off his forehead. "Good thing we made it in time. Any later, and the risks of surgery would have been higher." As I was being wheeled into the operating room, Mom hugged me tightly. She wanted to try one last time to persuade me. "Olivia, are you really willing to go through with this? I can see clearly that Ethan loves you. Can't you give him one more chance? He's done everything just to make you love him more." I looked at her weathered face and turned my gaze to the window. "So, when Joe knelt before you back then, begging for forgiveness, were those tears and promises real?" Mom froze, tears slipping down her face. "Mom, did you ever love Joe? Joe received so much love from you, didn't he?" Mom was speechless. I smiled faintly. "Once he got everything from you, he could abandon you without hesitation, leaving all your vulnerabilities behind. To him, Mom had no secrets left. There was no need to linger. Losing vigilance and cutting off your own escape route is the most tragic thing for a woman. So Ethan, who never received my love, is not pitiable. Mom touched my face. I understand now. Sweetie, you're clearer-headed than I ever was. There was both pride and a trace of sadness in her eyes. I comforted her. Life is full of disappointments. This outcome satisfies me. If it weren't for this unexpected pregnancy, my escape route would have been flawless. But it's okay, physical wounds heal quickly. After leaving the operating room, I was in relatively good spirits and asked my partner to take Mom back to Boston first. She had achieved what she came here for. 18, the anesthesia had just worn off when Ethan stormed into my hospital room. He stared at me, hooked up to an IV, his face darkened. "Where's the baby?" After the surgery, the nurse took it away. His eyes burned with rage, and he rushed up to me, his hands gripping my throat. "You lied to me, Olivia. You never planned to keep this baby. It was your escape route, not mine." I had no obligation to pay for his one-sided wishful thinking. His eyes turned blood red, and fury and pain surged like a storm within them. Was he upset that he had lost control of the situation? Too bad. I don't like having my rhythm disrupted either. Now that the baby is gone, can we talk about the divorce? "Don't even think about it," he said coldly, his voice like ice. "So, are you planning to break your promise and drag this out for another 2 years?" I repeated the threat he once used against me. "Even if you manipulate everything, I'll only spend 2 more years playing along with you," I said. 2 years I could afford to wait. He chuckled bitterly. "So, Olivia, you became a lawyer just to fight against me." "I only wanted to protect myself," I replied. We faced off stubbornly for a while, neither willing to back down. Finally, Ethan let go of me and slumped onto the edge of the bed, defeated. "The child is innocent. If you truly want a divorce, why didn't you talk to me about it?" I remained silent. For a fleeting moment, I had indeed considered it, leaving the child behind and divorcing him. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't want any further entanglements with Ethan, and I wasn't sure if I could take on the responsibility of raising a child. As Zoe said, I'm an impulsive, neurotic mess. So, for this lifetime, I decided that loving myself was enough. After our argument, I sent Ethan an audio message on his phone. He didn't reply. But a few days later, I heard the announcement that Zoe's family's small company had been liquidated and declared bankrupt. Word got around that Zoe, with no other options, had gone back to Ethan. That, however, was no longer any of my concern. On the day Zoe's family went bankrupt, Ethan finally agreed to sign the divorce papers. He even made some concessions in the original terms, favoring me more generously. Naturally, I didn't complain about getting more money. Things had finally gone the way I wanted. I walked away with a hefty settlement, turning the page with ease. After the divorce, I returned to my mom's house in Seattle. She insisted on taking care of me until I fully recovered, and I had no reason to refuse. Otherwise, her guilt might trigger her old illness. My stepfather was an honest and humble man, and my stepsister had already gotten married. With that, I felt at ease, settling down to recuperate in Seattle. With the generous compensation I received, I opened a pottery DIY shop near the neighborhood. Initially, I had intended it as a personal hobby, but to my surprise, the business boomed. I ended up renting the adjacent storefront to create a private studio for myself. The next time I saw Ethan was in midwinter, as heavy snow blanketed Seattle. He was still wearing his signature navy overcoat, now paired with a camel-colored scarf around his neck. I had heard that his business empire had expanded in the past few months, and I assumed he'd have no time to visit a small shop like mine. He sat across from me, silently watching as I worked on an unfinished clay piece. "What is it?" he asked. I replied that I hadn't decided yet, that I'd see what it turned out to be. "I'm not with Zoe," he suddenly said. My hands paused mid-motion. He chuckled self-deprecatingly. "Yes, you guessed right. I'm still testing you. I don't believe you're completely indifferent." I sighed softly, stopping the machine. Standing up, I washed my hands and made him a cup of coffee. He took a sip, cradling the cup in his hands and staring down. "I suppose I won't get to taste coffee this familiar anymore. Olivia, have I really made such a mistake? I only wanted you to care about me a little differently, a little more intensely." I didn't know how to respond to him. He suddenly laughed bitterly. You must be mocking me in your mind, aren't you? I used such despicable tactics, recklessly hurting you. So, is this what it feels like to love someone? I focused my gaze on him and suddenly asked, what? He looked up at me, perplexed. Then this kind of love is terrifying. Better not to have it, I said earnestly. Realizing what I meant, Ethan's expression turned slightly embarrassed. No, this isn't love, he said. After finishing his sentence, his eyes seemed to glisten with moisture. He knew it was his selfishness and greed that had led to this. As I saw him off, Ethan asked reluctantly, if I hadn't tried to change, would we have made it to the end? Yes, I answered without hesitation. He nodded, opened the car door, and got in. As the car turned to leave, I knew this was likely the last time we'd ever see each other. Olivia, you were right all along. In the back seat of the car, Ethan covered his eyes with his hand, his figure enveloped in shadows. There were still so many things he hadn't said to Olivia. For instance, he still hadn't gotten used to the big bed feeling emptier without her, or the unique sound of Olivia's steady, gentle footsteps in the house. Even Emma's cries, always accompanied by Olivia's calm and unwavering reassurances, lingered in his mind. He used to resent Olivia's negotiation-like approach to soothing Emma during tantrums. Only now, after cycling through numerous tutors and high-end nannies who couldn't handle Emma, did he realize that Olivia had her own kind of wisdom. He always thought Emma lacked motherly love, that it was unfair and incomplete. But could a truly neglected child grow into someone as bold, confident, and independent as Emma? He realized the issue was him all along. He wanted to prove Olivia was wrong. He had used Emma as an excuse countless times to demand more, but it was really about himself. He wanted more of Olivia's love. He just didn't know how to express it. It was only after losing her that he understood he'd already had the best companionship all along. Back at home, Emma was throwing a tantrum, smashing an antique ornament in the living room. The new teacher stood trembling with anger. The house was filled with Emma's shrieks. No, no, Olivia always respected me. I don't want your fake kindness, it's disgusting and pretentious. I'm not a child anymore. Ethan stepped into the room. But only children throw tantrums and cry. Without realizing it, he repeated the very words Olivia would have said. Emma turned her head away, tears streaming down her face. Dad, I miss Aunt Olivia. I want Aunt Olivia. Ethan hardened his heart, but she doesn't want us anymore. Emma followed him closely, her voice full of determination. Is it because she's mad at me? Is it because I didn't want a little brother or sister? I was wrong, Dad. I want siblings now. Make her come back. I didn't mean to upset her. I was just trying to get along with Aunt Zoe so she'd be nicer to me. Was she not good to you? Ethan stopped in his tracks. Emma sobbed uncontrollably. I realize now that she's the only one who truly cared about me. She's a stepmom's child just like me. That's why she hadn't let the rain fall on Emma back then. Now, both Ethan and Emma understood. Pretending to love is easy. Respect and responsibility are the hardest to maintain. Often, it isn't about being fiery or unconditional, it's about giving a little space, keeping a little distance. That's what allows people to go farther together. Deep love doesn't last, wisdom often wounds. Strength taken too far leads to disgrace. Olivia had long understood this. When I was living in New York City, I would occasionally hear news about Ethan. There were people in our social circles who tried to match us up for a remarriage. I turned them down every time. They said Ethan hadn't been with another woman since and only showed any emotion when someone mentioned me. I listened indifferently and left it at that. As for my life now, I am deeply satisfied and immensely grateful. I don't regret any of the steps I've taken. Before settling down, I always had an exit strategy in mind. So after the divorce, Ethan might toss and turn at night, tormented by the fact that he never truly had me, consumed by regret and longing. But I remain the same, live unexpectant and unperturbed.